When a woman ended up in a car crash because of her speeding, she assumed the worst. But then, a miracle came forward in the form of a dog. In the state of Georgia, there is a quaint town known as Pavo. Shannon Lorio had lived in the quiet area for as long as she could remember. She shared a home with her husband, and much like everyone else in the neighborhood, they simply kept to themselves. On the 26th of January, Shannon went through a life-changing experience. During that evening, she got into an argument with her husband. Although quarreling is quite common within relationships, this fight ended up escalating very quickly. It was too much for Shannon to handle. After it went down, what Shannon wanted above all else was some space. Shannon left the house and headed towards her car. A nighttime drive sounded like the ideal thing to cool off. She jumped into the car and sped off. Although she had been driving for years and knew the rules, safety was the last thing on her mind. She was angry. This seemed like the perfect outlet, and so she accelerated. Her heart pounded against her chest as she drove faster and faster. If you were to visit Georgia, you would notice how woodsy some of the areas are. There is an abundance of fully grown trees in the state, and while this is usually something to appreciate, there are times when this can pose a problem for travelers or drivers. Georgia is also known for its windy roads, which are long and curvy. Coupled with the countless trees, people should be cautious, especially when driving down the infamous NASCAR road. Shannon ended up on that road, although she had heard all the warnings surrounding this area. The emotions from the argument still had her in a high-strung state. Although safety wasn't the first thing on her mind, Shannon still tried to follow the windy path to the best of her ability. The first time she approached a strong curve, she was able to turn the car around with no problem. Then she needed to make another turn. She would soon come to learn that this one was nothing like the last. When I came into the second curve, the car fishtailed, Shannon recalled. In an instant, her world flipped. Shannon was flung out of the driver's seat and thrown out of the back glass of her car. Her head hit the glass, and she lost consciousness. When the poor woman woke up again, her head wouldn't stop spinning. She couldn't make sense of the situation she was in because everything was so hazy. She could feel that her legs were in the back seat and that her torso was in an uncomfortable position. Unfortunately, she was trapped. Because of the way my car went into the trees, anyone who was coming wouldn't see me, said Shannon. Her car had swerved so deeply into the trees that the only way someone would have been able to notice it was if they were walking by. Cars would have sped by too quickly to have seen that anything in the area was amiss. When she realized that no one was coming for her, Shannon started to panic. She thought of her husband and their fight, about how much she regretted the drive that had led her to where she was. Her body was weak, and she used the remaining strength she had left to cry. Just as Shannon had begun to give up, a wandering dog suddenly approached the car. This is how the dying woman got rescued from a car crash by a homeless dog. She genuinely believed that she was stuck there, and that no one would find her until it was too late. When reflecting on this moment, Shannon said, "I don't know if he was making his rounds. I don't know if he was headed back to his original owner, but he came across me, and I thank God that he did." The dog dragged her over 100 feet to get help. And because of this amazing act of kindness, the woman's life was saved. The mysterious animal pulled her all the way from the trees and across the grass. Finally, they reached the area just beside the road. There was a significantly better chance of Shannon finding help while in that spot, since drivers were more likely to see her. However, Shannon still felt as if she needed to do more than lie down on the ground and wait for a car to come by. Inspired by the furry animal's determination, Shannon tried to push herself off of the ground. Understandably, she struggled at first. Nevertheless, the canine wouldn't give up on her, and so he moved closer and leaned down slightly, as if offering his neck to her. Shannon wrapped her arms around the dog's neck and pulled to the best of her ability. For the first time since the car accident, Shannon stood up. She could feel the wind against her hair and skin. It was a cold night, and she wasn't wearing many layers. Despite that, she was warmed simply by the thought that this dog had gone out of its way for her sake. They stood together, waiting for someone to come by. While Shannon held onto the stable canine, a vehicle finally came along. It was dark, and she couldn't see clearly, so she was unable to distinguish what kind of vehicle it was. Nevertheless, Shannon was overjoyed when it slowed down to where she and the dog were. With all the strength she could muster, she leaned into the window and asked the passengers for help. She was almost in tears as she said, "I just wrecked my car. Will you please call my husband?" The effort must have been too much for Shannon's fragile condition, because she quickly passed out once again. While she was unconscious, the strangers inside the vehicle swiftly made some calls and got her the help she needed. Shannon was out for some time. The next time she opened her eyes, she was lying down on a hospital bed. Alerted that she had woken up, a doctor soon came to her side to recall what had happened to her. Although Shannon's vision was still hazy from sleep, she was able to make out the doctor's worried expression. "Shannon," the doctor said her name cautiously, "you've got a small bleed in the brain." After the stressful news, the doctors and nurses had to figure out whether their new patient needed surgery. Brain hemorrhages can be very serious, so they wanted to make the best decision possible to ensure that Shannon would be okay. During the wait, Shannon lay awake in bed. Although she had been resting, her mind wandered back to the fight, the crash, and the dog who had saved her life. Everything that had happened within the last 24 hours felt like a dream. A few hours passed before the doctor returned to Shannon's room. Fortunately, the medics confirmed that the bleed was not a big one and that so long as she rested, her body would heal itself. This meant that she didn't require any expensive or risky surgery and that she was free to go home in the comfort of her house and with the support of her husband. Shannon was able to fully recover. "This dog, he did everything, and it is such a wonderful animal. If he hadn't saved me, I wouldn't be here today," said Shannon. She couldn't praise the canine enough. Although Shannon had first assumed that the dog had an owner, he was actually a stray. Nevertheless, after his heroic act, people could no longer ignore this dog. While Shannon was recovering from her injuries, the dog was taken in by the Humane Society. This canine attracted a lot of attention and was lucky enough to be adopted. Since then, he has been given a name which many would consider to be the perfect reflection of his character. He is named Hero. Hero was adopted by Heidi Droughty. This woman is a canine search and rescue trainer, and there couldn't be a better owner for this savior dog. Heidi immediately started to train Hero with the intention of making him a certified mission-ready search dog. "We're training him for the wilderness right now. He is doing really well," explained Heidi. "It's amazing to think that Hero was able to put himself out there and search for someone in need of help without any form of training. Everyone could see how pure his heart was." Shannon shared her story during an interview, and the video was uploaded onto the internet soon after. Since then, it has amassed thousands of views. Towards the end of the video, Shannon cried tears of happiness as she showed her appreciation for the dog who helped her. "He will always be my hero." If you enjoyed hearing about this miracle story, leave a like down below and subscribe for more.